So what you need to know, not only are these two fine individuals, personal friends of mine, they are also steeped in rugby league. I could list the number of positions and the number of clubs they've been involved with, but it'd take too long to take the rest of the day. What I can tell you is they are both past presidents of the Rugby Football League. In fact, Kath was the very first female president of the Rugby Football League, which in itself is a great achievement about breaking the glass ceiling. So, without further ado, let me introduce Kath Hetherington, former president of the Rugby Football League and chairman of Hull FC and Gateshead and Sheffield beforehand. And come on to that. We'll go on to that. And I said, better half. I can't say that, can I? And another half. You two are sat so close together, that's the important thing. Gary, now I'm going to just say one thing. There's a lot of rivalry in Rugby League, significant rivalry, but that rivalry is no more intense than between Featherstone and Castleford. I promise you. I mean, it's vicious. Now, as it happens, Kath comes from Featherstone. And Gary comes from Castleford. So this makes some of the stuff that goes on in Gaza at the moment look peaceful, because never the twain shall meet. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Gary and Kath Hetherington. I've lost my questions there. So Kath, do you want to just explain how a Featherstone lass gets together with a Cass lad?
Well, my brother Gary said it'd never work. It'll never last. Cass and Featherstone, it'll never last. And it's 40 odd years now. But I'm long suffering. My younger brother played for the Castleford district side, and Gary played for the Castleford district side. And that's where I sort of first know of him. Because I was interested in good players, not on a...
Not necessarily Gary though.
And then my younger brother was playing for Leeds 18, and they were playing Bramley, and Gary was watching Steve Ferris, and it was in the old paddock we were watching, and we got talking there. And then I don't think he'd ever met a woman that knew about rugby league, so he was smitten. I can't say I was.
I bet your parents were devastated. Gary, I'll give you the right reply.
I was going to say, it doesn't get any more romantic than that, does it?
No. What the paddock in Bramley?
It's at Hetherington, of all places. Hetherington on the paddock at Hetherington. And on the first day, it was actually the third test, Great Britain versus Australia at Warrington. So that's pretty good.
1973 then?
It was 1973, a freezing cold day, yes.
Should have been called off that game, just were frozen. Yeah, David Wade played that game, do you know that?
I don't know, yes.
Yeah, you should have been coaching, I don't know what I'm teaching. Yeah. So you're a Cass lad, and Cass has got a rich heritage of producing players, good players. So you must have played in that school side. I know some of the players you played with. So what's some of the players you played with?
Well, my best mate I grew up with was John Joyner, and we all played rugby league together at the school in Castleford. And in those days, every Saturday morning, all the local schools used to play against each other. Schools from Castleford and Featherstone, Pontefract, Normington, really thriving schools competition. And then there was a district team. The best players from the various schools got to play in the district team. So even though our school had got the least number of pupils, we got 4 players in that district team, including John Joyner and Roy Bratt, who went on to have a really good career at Wakefield Trinity, Bob Gately, who was a professional as well at Tunsley. Those were the sort of players in our team, and our schoolboy rugby league was really strong in Castleford.
And when you were a boy, you used to go with your uncle or your granddad who took you over to Oldham to watch the training, which this was before M62.
Oh yeah, I was a fanatical Castleford fan. For I say, the only thing that I was interested in was rugby league, and I started going with my uncle. He used to take me on a Saturday morning. He used to go to his house and do gardening for him. And then after about 3 or 4 hours gardening, as a treat, he would take me to watch Castleford in the afternoon. Little did I know, but we used to go in at half time to get in for free. later in life and I realised there were two halves to a game. And I'd be about 8 years of age at that time, and you know, and we used to go to all the games, so I just sort of fell in love with the game. Both, you know, the club, I was a Castleford fan, but I just loved the players, the fans, the grounds, just everything about the ground. That's the only thing I was really interested in at school.
And Kath, you're the only girl in a family of boys, and one of them played for Great Britain. Is that how many brothers?
Yeah, well, my oldest brother was 14 years older than me, so when I was 6, I started going to watch Featherstone. First game was at Tattersfield, Doncaster, very aptly named. Oh, but my brother was Gary Cooper.
Yeah.
And my mother apparently did call him after Gary Cooper.
Well, the actor.
Yeah.
And which year did he tour?
He toured in '62. Actually, he nearly got drowned in New Zealand. Ike Salford pulled him out. He got in a rip and nearly got killed.
So you lost him?
Yeah, I mean, he was balmy. He was absolutely balmy. Unbelievable. I mean, he as a player, he started coaching, and probably was before his time. Gary went to Wakefield with him, and then York, and he just had some crazy ideas. He used to change the team every week, 3 or 4 different players. And Gary said he learnt a lot from him, what not to do. But he taught me about the game, because he played fullback, and he'd stand behind sticks with me, and he'd show me what I should be looking for. If somebody stood on having a fag on blindside and stuff like that, you know, and I really learnt a lot. Because as a kid, as a young child, you soak everything up. And the one thing that I did learn from him was to see what you see, not what you want to see. So you watch a player, and you might go and watch somebody because you want an half-back. And you've got to see what you see, not, oh, we need an half-back, so we'll have him. And then make a big mistake, and that stood us in good stead, at Sheffield in particular.
And we're going to Sheffield in a minute, but your professional career, you had more clubs than Jack Nicholson. I'm going to say that. It started at Wakefield, did it? And of course you're going to deal with the allegation from one of our previous guests that you paid for yourself to join Huddersfield, or paid for yourself to get out of Huddersfield. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, well, I was always sort of destined to play for Castleford. I sort of grew up in Castleford in the 1960s, and my father was a miner, who later became the manager of the local colliery, the colliery in Welldale, not far from the Castleford Rugby League ground, and all his brothers were miners as well. When you were growing up in Castleford as a lad in the 1960s, unless you were academic, and I wasn't academic, you were destined for life underground, basically, life in the pits. And because my dad was sort of boss of one of the pits, on a Sunday when the pit wasn't working, occasionally he'd go down the shaft, and he took me down a few times, and I just couldn't believe that people could spend a third of their life underground working. So when I was about 8 or 9 years of age, I made a strategic decision: I'm not coming down here. And so I realised I wanted to get good at something. And actually, if you become a professional rugby league player, even though it was part-time in those days, it was a form of escapism, really. Escape to life in the pits. So there was no way I was going to ever work in the pits. And in fact, I wasn't much good at anything else. So really, I just set my stall out to become a professional rugby league player. That's what I wanted to do. And I really was always destined to go to Castleford. I was captain of the junior side. And then one day, Kath's brother turned up in a big furniture wagon, knocked on my door, and he was then, along with Neil Fawkes, coaching at Wakefield Trinity. And he persuaded me to go to Wakefield. I didn't take a lot of persuading. It was a big club at the time, was Wakefield. And I went along there. I was still at school at the time. I was still at school when I made my debut, so I had to play under an assumed name. But yes, that was quite an exciting time for me to go to Wakefield. But as Nigel said, I had quite a few clubs, and the sort of common thread with me at all the clubs was I used to fall out with them. I used to fall out with the coach. because I thought there'd got to be a better way of coaching than what we had then days. I used to fall out with the chairman, I used to fall out with the board because I thought the clubs weren't running as well as they could have been. I must have been a nightmare really. I'd never have anybody like me at our club now. But yeah, I was in many ways an unfulfilled player because I was searching for something. I wanted to belong to the club where everybody's going in the right direction. And I never quite found it as a player, and all I ever got offered actually was money. And to be honest, we all need money, but that was not what I was looking for. And I never quite found it as a player, and in many ways that's what led to starting our own club, which was to the Sheffield Eagles many years later.
And you said you played under an assumed name, is that right? How many times did you play under an assumed name?
Only twice, I think. One of them was my debut was Wakefield Trinity in 1972, and Wakefield had a good side in those days. And I was still at school, and at that time you weren't allowed to play professional rugby league if you were still a schoolboy, and I was. So I played under somebody else's name. I'm not sure whose it was. And then of course I left school, and there was one other occasion which Nigel doesn't know about, but I once played for Doncaster, and I wanted to keep this a secret because nobody else knows. At the time I was actually the captain of Huddersfield, and a friend of mine was the coach of Doncaster. It was a Wednesday night game away at Swinton, and the game was played at Burnham Park, which was the home of Bolton Wanderers. And my friend at the time, who was the coach of Huddersfield, he phoned me up and said, "What are you doing tonight? Do you fancy doing a ride through with us?" And they used to pick up at Castleton bus station, which was only 5 minutes from where I lived. And so I said, "Yeah," and I went joining, because I got on the bus to go to watch the game. And this is never brought me boots. Well, of course, I've not got any boots. I've no intention of playing, but I was cajoled into playing. Once again, under an assumed name where nobody else was to know. Certainly the powers that be at the LFL. And I think to this day, they still don't know. So I think I've probably got away with that one.
There is a statute of limitations, I think, so I think that's probably expired now. But actually, you're a mystery in other ways as well, because of course nowadays, if you're involved with rugby league, you're not allowed to bet on rugby league, you're not allowed to do that, for obvious reasons, because you don't want to influence the outcome of games. But Gary was actually involved in a betting sting 40 years ago when we were playing for York, I think, against Rochdale Hornets, when the well, should I to tell you? Do you remember? You're looking very innocent there. Well,
no, because you won't tell it truthfully.
Yeah, go on.
We all used to have a bet. All players used to have a bet and bet it against themselves, sometimes for the other team to win, and it wasn't an issue then. And I don't know if you remember, but William Hill used to have the coupon. And if you got 4 results, I think you got 9-1 odds, and if you got 5 results, you got 17-1. So there used to be a little syndicate as us when we played for York. People like Terry Day and Alan Rhodes, quite a few, about 6 or 7 of them, and we'd put a few quid in and have a bet. And we'd generally go for 5 results. So it might be that we might have 30 quid on 5 results at 17-1. So we collected quite a few a bit of cash. And this particular weekend, we had put the bet on, as we always did, and we were the last team to play on the Sunday afternoon. The other games had been played on a Friday night and a Saturday afternoon. And all the results had gone our way. And so it all hinged on our results at Rochdale. This was Rochdale versus York. In those days, Rochdale had a pretty good side. And I can't quite remember exactly how many points start we had. I think it was something like about 14. And we backed ourselves to lose, but by not more than 14. And it was a pretty tight game, and we went into the last phase of the game, and we were losing by 50 or 60. I think it must have been 50, because with the last, as the game was going into the last period of the game, and with only a few minutes to go, we had a penalty, and all the players immediately points to the post. Of course, we're losing by 15 points. Last minute of the game, all the players paid points to the post. Of course, the crowd wonders what we're doing. I had to keep the goal. I've never ever been under more pressure than to keep that goal, which actually did not affect the result at all, but the result was being up on the Cooper. And I'm pleased to say that the ball sailed between the posts and our players were delirious.
So, Kath, 1984 probably, and you know we've heard what we've heard what a trouble causer Gary was with all his various clubs, and he's decided that you know the only way to kind of fix to scratch his itch is to have his own club. So he probably came home one night and said, I know what we're doing, love, I'm going to form a new club, and I know exactly where to put it. I'm going to put it in Sheffield. And you reacted by saying, that sounds like a great idea.
Well, to be honest, I mean, he'd been to York for an interview to a coach, and they chose Alan Hardesty instead, went for the safe Bradford. And he came home and he said, well, they just don't get it, they just don't get what I'm trying to say to them, they don't understand the vision, etc, etc. He said, we're going to have to start an own team. At that time, I don't think he particularly said Sheffield that night, I can't remember that, but that's what you do, start your own team.
And when
it never, look, we were young and naive, it never crossed my mind that, you know, it wouldn't work. Never crossed my mind.
Well, you didn't do badly at it, to be
No,
fair.
we didn't, no, Nigel, no, but it wasn't something that I thought about, obviously.
There must
But
have
it
been
must have been something he'd been thinking about.
There must have been some. I know that your backers at the time were a television company, and
Yeah.
then on the eve of the season,
Yeah.
they pulled out and left you out
It
dry
is.
nearly.
It
So
is,
you had
yeah.
to knock on a few doors,
Yeah.
borrow a few players, do all the things that
Yeah.
it's a big undertaking.
Well, the thing was, at that time I was still in double glazing for Everest. There you go, what do you call him? Forgotten his name.
Yes.
Ted Moult. And he was working, I was doing alright with that. I did quite well actually. Again, I was the only woman out of 2,000 salespeople.
Wow.
Yeah, but it never, I've had 4 brothers, where we lived on the green, everybody had lads. It never occurred to me that I was the only girl, if you know what I mean. I know, but it never, I thought that was normal. You know, so I'd done alright, and we'd saved up £13,000, which at that time would have paid off the mortgage and etc, etc. And we,
Still on.
yeah, with 3 kids as well. And 1980, we decided to go ahead with it. 1984 was the miners' strike, so double glazing went. So we decided to put that 13,000 into starting the team. People at that time thought we were all right, not like now they think the bullocks are the thing.
Yeah, welcome to my world.
But people in the game were quite good. But to be fair, we were both decent judges of the player, especially the young player. And we unearthed a lot of good players, to be honest. If you look back at the players that played for Sheffield, who played international, you know, it was a tough time, but it was enjoyable.
That first couple of years, I mean, at the time, that first couple, there were like Fulham had come in, and then Carlisle and Cardiff, and then there were yourselves and Mansfield, I think, and so there were a bit of an expansionist deal, but one by one they all fell over, and you survived. So when that first team that you put out there, you must have begged for players, you know, family members, members from your, you know, anybody who could, you know, strap a boot still and play. You probably put together a right collection of misfits, yeah, is that right?
Well, the intention was it going to be done in a big way. Initially, it was going to be at Sheffield United, but then they pulled out not want to go, and so we ended up. The council was really good actually. They provided a stadium at Alderton, which wasn't a particularly swobby stadium, but it did a job. But with no money. As a Kath said, the 13,000 was the initial capital investment, and there was never any more money put in. Actually, you could only spend what we earned effectively. But to start with, we sort of cobbled a team together really, and from the miners' strike, 1 or 2 miners who had retired came and played. Vince Fowler, probably the best known, he'd retired and been a good player, Vince. But he was a miner, he was out on strike, so we managed to get him to come and play. And Darryl Powell actually was the first player that we signed as an 18-year-old from Leadhill in Castleford. So we signed quite a number of young players, and only 3 from other clubs. Billy Harris from Wakefield for 500 quid. I'd got Mark Campbell from Leeds, and the big player signing was Paul McDermott, somebody who I played with many years previously at Wakefield Trinity. All the other players came effectively out of the amateur game, and in that first year it was pretty desperate really, because we had crowds of 120. These were in the days before I'd ever heard of due diligence and market research and things like that. And to be honest, Sheffield wasn't the right place to have started a new club. I thought it was. I thought it's very close to the Rugby League heartland. We'd get visit players there easy enough. We'd be visiting supporters and such. It's a big sporting city. It'll lend itself to Rugby League. But of course, what I quickly realised, there was no interest in rugby at all, either union or league. And it had got 2 big soccer clubs in the city. So it was a soccer city in Sheffield, and it's still a struggle to this day. But that was the challenge really. We had to find a way of becoming part of the sort of sporting scene. Players like Darryl Powell and Mark Aston and myself went in coaching rugby league in schools and just getting into the sort of sporting psyche of the Sheffield. But of course we didn't win many games because we didn't have a good side. And financially, it was such a struggle. In fact, we were insolvent basically. I'll never forget. Probably in year 2, we survived year 1. The total income for that year was £84,000. I also went selling double glazing because I couldn't afford to take a wage from the club. So both Kath and myself were selling double glazing, and we made a good fist out of it. But yeah, I can't quite remember whether it was in year 2 or 3 when we had a visit from the bank manager. We used to have board meetings at home and in the lounge once the kids had gone to bed. And the bank manager came and he explained to us that basically the business was insolvent, and that all the responsibilities of us as directors and others, of course. And we listened to him for a good half an hour, maybe longer, and eventually I said to him, well, thank you very much, and everything you've said makes eminent sense. I couldn't disagree with anything at all. We do understand what you're talking about. However, we're not going to fold it like you're advising. So can we now spend the rest of the time just thinking of how we might be able to make it better? And that proved to be a really good next 2 hours. We had another bottle of wine, and the bank manager was really helpful, and there were a few other directors we got in the room. And all the thoughts was just on how we actually can improve things, how we can take it forward. And it's about making small gains as well. It's not going to be some major invention that's going to take us forward. It's stabilising and gradually going. And we did that both on the field and indeed off the field, and gradually got a business together that was sustainable, eventually profitable. And that's what, in many ways, that was the success of Sheffield Eels. We got promoted after 5 years and came 5th in the top division a few years later. So it was achieving success on the field, but also, even more importantly, becoming a stable business, ultimately a profitable business that could reinvest into the club. And that was probably the biggest success in many ways.
Yeah, and
one story, it's a bit later, but the mid-90s, if you remember, they had big tax investigations into backhanders and one thing and another. And they came along to us and said, look, we've never done anything like, we've never had any money to give them. But they wouldn't believe it, they'd 18 months spent looking for nothing. And that about sums up HMRC to them.
So, I mean, were you chairman coach then in that first year, yeah? Because I think that's almost what we're looking at here, actually, to be fair.
I was,
Don't worry, Nigel.
I think Kath was the chairman.
No, you were chairman.
Oh, I was chairman.
I went to the lake.
I was chairman in name only, Kath was the boss. Actually, I wasn't chairman, no, I wasn't chairman. I was chief exec. And yeah, might have been. But actually, one of the conditions of our entry, we only got voted into the Rugby League by 1 vote. And at the same time, Mansfield Marston got voted in as well. So Sheffield and Mansfield came in together in 1984. Previously, Fulham had come in, I think in 1982. Some of those clubs you mentioned came in later. But we only got in by one vote, and but one of the were two stipulations by the Rugby Football, the Rugby League Council having got accepted. One is that in year one we didn't get any distribution, which was a ridiculous thing to do, but typical Rugby League at the time. The second regulation was that I could not be on the Rugby League Council as a member for Sheffield Eagles. Previously I'd been involved in creating the Players Union back in 1982, and so I wasn't particularly popular with the establishment at the time. So that was a regulation, and one of our other directors who said, well, if Gary can't be the council representative, the best option is Kath. And so Kath became the Sheffield Eagles representative of the Rugby League Council, and that in itself caused quite a storm, because Kath turned up at her first Rugby League Council meeting at Chapeltown Road. For the first time in 90 odd years, a woman had arrived, and that caused real consternation amongst the Rugby League Council. And they asked Kath to leave while they discussed whether indeed she could stay. And Kath says, you can have a look, I'm not leaving.
No. What he's failed to tell you is her age was pregnant at the time. And you could have rolled me down the street. And I couldn't, but well I could, because I said to him when he said about it, I said, I'm not going on there. I said, they've got a reputation of being a set of I'm not going on.
Yeah, not much change, have you?
There you go.
So, Gary, one of the during those dark days, yeah, you might. By the way, I haven't pre-warned you of any of these questions. So if he needs a bit of thinking time, it's his age. So during those dark days, you were the only team to lose at Bridgend. Do you remember? You only two, and you reacted in a particular way because you were embarrassed. And as I recall, you wrote to all the supporters that had gone down to support you that day a letter of apology.
I didn't get there, 22 of them. I don't know personally. You get, sometimes you get a feel it's not going to be your day. And we're playing Bridgend away. We went to good side. We won about 4 or 5 games in that opening season. And we turned up to play Bridgend away. They weren't a good side either, but they were probably a little bit better than us on the day. But I remember we all met at the Post House Hotel at Ossett. And it had to be an early start on a Wallace Island bus as it was. And I remember all on the bus, and as the bus driver came out of the Ossett Post House, he said to me, is he left here? No 200 miles to go, so I just got the impression that this is a little bit of a tough day ahead. And yeah, we did quite right. We played Bridgend away. Fred Lindop was the referee, and he penalised us as to death. And playing for Bridgend that day was Dave Allred, who was quite a successful kicker of the ball. He played American football. He'd actually played for us a few years earlier. He couldn't play at all, but he was a phenomenal kicker. And he actually kicked all the penalties that day, and Bridgend they won the game. And that was a disappointment, an embarrassment, because we not won many, but that was one we could and should have won, and we didn't. But that in many ways summed up the first season. The first season we didn't come bottom, because I think Doncaster and Hoyton were below us in the league table, maybe Bridgend themselves. But that first season was a real trial, both on and off the field, and anybody looking at it think, well, this can't survive. And in truth, it probably shouldn't have done. It survived because we were determined to make it better. Sometimes out of adversity comes a bit of triumph if you're really determined to improve. And we were the first club to offer contracts. We put all our players on contracts, and they were £2,000. That's what they were. They were the first Rugby League players to be contracted in 1984. But we quickly realised we weren't going to be able to fulfil them all. So I had to get all the players together to training session and apologise to them and say, effectively you're all free agents. If you want to carry on playing for us, be at training on Thursday. And every player turned up, and I turned up at training on the Thursday not knowing anybody, and everybody turned up at part 1. And that one is actually a guy that's very much involved in the game today, Mark Campbell, who's now the owner of Featherstone Rovers. Well, Mark played for me in that first year. And he said, you can bollocks, I'm not playing for the club now. And he didn't turn up, but he was the only one. And from there on, fortunately Darryl Powell was always going to be a good player. He was ill that day, so he didn't get that commitment. But they were typical of how you just got to manage your way through. And there were so many times when people talk about, we're down at Leeds and lose a couple of games, people say you must feel the great pressure. Well, pressure is when you've got a problem and you don't have a solution. And there were so many times when we needed to find how we're going to pay the wages of this month at the end of the month, and we didn't know. Unfortunately, something cropped up, or you make something happen. It's that's I think many people have been in business, different types of businesses, and had those same experiences. But you've just got to find a way of making it work, and that's what we were doing on a fairly regular basis.
And it makes you very resourceful and very resilient. But one of the things that you did as well is you trade with players quite well. And when you signed Lee Jackson, you signed him from Hull, I think. You needed to raise some money. Is that right?
Yeah, we did, and that's we bought players. Didn't buy them, we acquired them, and then ultimately we had to sell them because that's how we traded. Of course, the best one, we took Sonny Nicol from Hunslet for 19,000. And Kath used to persuade, I was a bit more cautious, whereas Kath was a bit more creative, and she pestered me into signing somebody. And I remember Sonny Nicol, we got Sonny from Hunslet, and we got him for 19,000. Now 3 years later, and he gave us great service to Sonny, we sold him for 120,000 to St Helens. So that paid a few bills as well. But yes, Lee Jackson was probably a good example because we were in the top division at this time, and our hooker Mick Cook, we thought he'd broke. Yes, we played here at Bradford and we lost. And then Mick, we thought he'd broke his leg, so we needed a hooker. And Lee Jackson was on the whole transfer list, so Kath pestered the life out of me to go see Lee Jackson. So I did, and Lee was keen to join us. So I said, well, provided we can agree a deal with Hull, we'll look at signing him. And I did agree a deal with Hull for £75,000. And but the problem is we didn't have £75,000. And so we and at that time we had to pay half the fare to be paid, pretty much up front. And Hull actually gave us a bit of time because the board didn't agree with the chairman and therefore wanted to renege on the deal, so that stalled it somewhat, which helped us because it bought us a bit of time. And it meant that we didn't have to make the first instalment. It was going to go to Rugby League Council. We defended ourselves and said that a deal had been done and so on. And I thought, well, how on earth are we going to raise 40,000 quid? And so we came up with the ingenious idea of making him the people's player, and appealing to all our band of supporters to be able for him to be the people's player. And could you, good fans, do creative fundraising schemes to raise the money? And so we encouraging all our fans to do whatever, charity races and this, that and the other, to actually raise funds. And I thought, well, I better do something myself. I can't be seen to be like the king in this counting house, just sat here collecting everybody else's money. So at the time, I was coaching the Sheffield Eagles at the time. I looked at the fixtures, and in 6 weeks' time we played St Helens away. So I said, I will run from Sheffield to St Helens to the game, and then and that's a fundraiser. And we collected monies from our sponsors and a variety of others, and I started training. Even though I'd been a rugby player, I'd never trained to be a runner. And so I used to go out training to run from Sheffield to St Helens. And I was going to run it over 3 days. And then I did. I got, fit as a runner, and then come off the hour and to run from Sheffield to St Helens. I thought, well, I better make sure I actually know the route. So I did the route in the car. But what I didn't realise in the car was that the first leg of the journey, which was effectively Sheffield to Buxton, is all uphill. I've not noticed that in the car, and that crippled me. And then the second leg, it was 31 miles and I got lost, so it probably ended up being more than that. And I remember I stopped at the Greyhound pub on that night. I booked in to stop at the Greyhound pub, and I remember phoning Kath from there, and I was in a pretty poor state of affairs really. And I got there, you know, much later than I anticipated. I'd only, the short leg was the last leg leading into the game. And so I was always going to do it, but it was a bit of a trial. Was that I have to say, you know, I ran into St Helens, the old Knowsley Road as it was then. The St Helens fans were terrific, and they all contributed as well. We raised about £47,000 with that initiative. And once again, it shows you what you can do out of, you know, just through being determined and coming up with an idea and getting people to support you. And so that in effect paid the first tranche for Lee Jackson. I remember at the game, getting to St Helens, and I was the coach of the Sheffield Eagles, and we had a pretty good side, and Lee Jackson was playing, and I saying to Lee, I need you to play well today. I need you to play well, having done 71 miles and more, as it was, in the last 3 days. It's buggered me up, and I'm not sure how quickly I'm going to recover, so mate, I want you to play well. And he did, to be fair to him, we beat St Helens, you know, it was quite a big day for the club. And not long afterwards he left to go to Australia, but nevertheless it went off to be. He was an example of what you can do out of adversity and with determination and getting a number of people to support you.
Yeah, so come on, there's a couple of us on our board at the back there, so before anyone's got any ideas about our chairman running the St Helens to somewhere, you can forget that. I can see Jason with his notepad out. Good ideas for a week, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure you. So fast forward now, you know, all the hard yards and then the sunny uplands. That is that little club just down the road from us here, and of course I won't let you go on and on about Leeds, but I will bring your mind back to probably, I think it was August 2005, when Leeds played Hull in the Challenge Cup final at Millennium, because of rebuilding, and of course you were the chairwoman and chief executive of the two competing finalists. So when the teams walked out at Millennium, Hull versus Leeds, you got Kath on one side and Gary on the other, which has obviously clearly never happened before in rugby league. Did that put any strain in the dinner table? You know, going to a cup final, you know, with your opposing chairman.
They were good. I mean, just the background to that is that you know, when I came up to Sheffield in 1996. We sold it and used some of the proceeds to actually, for Kath started Gateshead, along with a partner Shane Richardson. And a year later, the governing body was encouraging 14 teams to become 12, so they effectively took over Hull. And that's how Kath began to be the chairperson of Hull for some 12 years. And then Hull built a good side, and you know, I know when they won the semi-final, they beat St Helens in the semi-final. We beat Toulouse in the other semi-final, so set up a Leeds versus Hull Challenge Cup final at Cardiff, a full stadium at Cardiff. And yeah, we both went down in our own separate ways. I took with Leeds Rhinos and Kath with Hull, and it was a divided family because my two daughters are both Rhinos really. So they were with the dad in the Royal Box, and my son, he'll go to wherever he gets the best offer. When it was with his mother, and he was sat with his father. So we got our three children split up, and Kath and myself split up as well, of course. And I was pretty confident we'd win. But Kath was pretty confident as well, two good sides. Leeds had won the previous 9 times against Hull. And so, you know, we had a pretty good side in 2005. We beat Canterbury in the World Club Challenge a bit earlier that year, and we're riding high. But on the day, if you can remember, it was a good game. Hebden flowed, we didn't have much luck, and in the last minute of the game, Hull scored a try, and Danny Bruff kicked the goal to win 26-25. So that turned out a pretty disappointing time for me.
That was nothing to do with the bet, Gary, was it? That was nothing to do with the bet, was it?
He'd gone on and on and on all week. Because he thinks he's funny, he should probably, you know, and he'd gone, and I never reacted once. And we had, me and Dot, But she lived in granny flats that were purpose-built. I never got anywhere without my aunt Dot, to be fair. And my aunt Dot was on my side. But we got loads and loads of publicity out of it, and we played it as much as we could, because obviously any publicity that the game can get, you know, I mean, even as bad as it is at the moment with these NIs and what have you, the game is getting a load of publicity. You know, whether that's, and I do believe any publicity is good publicity, but the press really hammered it all week, and my son got really fed up of it because they kept taking photos, and he was like, if you look at the photos now, he's like, but it was a really good day, and we watched the game on the week actually, and it was a really good game, and I watched a few games recently of different eras, and I look at it and I think, I say to him, that was a really good game. You don't say that much these days.
That's because I was running there, then Kath. Anyway, so last question then. In all your careers, who is the best player, you know, that you've been involved with, you know, that you've had in your team, you know, who's your best player?
That's a tough one, isn't it? It's hard to say who's the best player. There's so many, and there's so many different qualities, you know, of players. So I really would find it impossible to actually say that so and so was the best player. You know, it's when people ask you about who was a great player. You know, so we often ban that about too often. You know, a great player, and there's been that many, you know, outstanding players in our game. Not that many what you would call great players. You know, there's a few who. You know, Neil Fox was a great player. Alex Murphy was a great player. I think Ellery Hanley was a great player. There are some, but there's not that many, but there are so many outstanding players. And we at Leeds have had a load of outstanding players, and Bradford Bulls have had so many great outstanding players as well. So there's been that many about. It's difficult to actually come up with an answer and say he was the best player.
I think probably the most underrated player was Daryl Powell. Because he played at Sheffield, I don't think he got the accolades that he's. But I think, I watched it 60 odd years now, so it's very difficult to say. But I think Cliffy Lyons, we had him at Sheffield for, 6 weeks? And he was just like, the first, he was carrying an hamstring all the time, but the first time he touched the ball, I thought, crikey. Wow, just could play. But I think Neil Fox is one that I would always pick out as probably the best player I've seen.
And Gary, you'll have played on here many times, will you? I mean, you'll have had some memories of playing here, I presume.
And not many good memories. Not many good memories. In fact, I was saying to Kath on the way here, I said, you know, I played here in the winter days of rugby, you know, to get changed in these up here, and then about 20-minute walk to the pitch. Then they sent off, you know. But so I played here quite a number of times with Leeds and York and a few teams, and I don't think I ever won here. Never won here as a player. I only can remember winning once as a coach, and that was with Sheffield Eagles on one really foggy night. We had to win to save getting relegated. We had a good win that night, but I can't remember many good days here at also. I was a Castleford fan in 1969 when the Castleford had won at Wembley for the first time since 1935. The week before, they came to Odsal to win the double in the first time in the history, and Leeds denied them 28-26. So I was a desperately disappointed fan here at Odsal. And that trend continued for many years, and so there's not many. I've not been here that often and gone away victorious. Leeds have had a few good wins here, but generally speaking, it's been a place of desolation and disappointment and depression.
Not actually, the one he missed, I can remember coming with him, and the dog we had put 17 stitches in his arm when he was at Leeds. And so he couldn't play, and I can remember being sat in that stand up there, and it was a bloody awful day. We were about this deep in morning, and Leeds got beat, and I said to him, a good one to miss.
Bradford, Odsal was, I always thought, Odsal, Thrumall, watershedings
Oh,
were the 3 coldest places in the world. They really were. And in the days of winter rugby, it was desolate coming here in the winter. Heavy, really, always a really heavy pitch, always a miserable there, bitterly cold there. Same at Thrumall, same at Watershed, same at a few other places as well, by the way. But yes, so also doesn't have that many happy memories for me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as with Mark and Rich beforehand, Gary and Kath have taken time out of the busy schedules to come here from the leafy suburbs where they live now to spend some time in the desolate. Normally, I would say, we've been playing at this ground since 1934. You know that? Since 1934. And if you want to know what it looked like in 1934, just have a look outside now. It's really changed. They're even spending money on Wakefield's ground and Cassie's ground, so you know what, we're slipping a bit on this. So, and I know, by the way, you amongst most of the rugby league hierarchy want the Bulls back up a division as well, so we can start replicating the 24,000 that turned up on that Good Friday in '99. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll join me in thanking the first lady of rugby league, Gary and Kath Hetherington. I've just got one other announcement today. It's unscripted. It's nothing to do with you, by the way. Don't worry. We're not giving you a bunch of flowers, or I don't get carried on. So a friend of mine is at the back there, Graham the Gravedigger. I don't know if you know him. You know Graham. As long as you keep moving, you're all right. If he gets his tape measure out, that's when you have to start worrying. So Graham and Riaz, his friend, do you want to go? I don't know, stay put. What they're going to do this year, they like to do a heritage project. They're going to find the last resting place of the team that played the first game for Bradford Northern in 1934. We're going to find it and we're going to mark that. So it's going to be a tour de force, and Riaz, you're going to film about that, aren't you? So you'll be able to watch it on YouTube. Graham's our resident Fred Dibner. We know Fred Dibner. He's got that chin there. That's so he's not looking upwards, he's looking downwards, but he's a good man. And without his assistance and help, many a frosted game or many a snowbound game won't get done. So, on behalf of the foundation, that's your project for the next 12 months, Graham. So we wish you well in that. So thank you for doing that. Well, that's been good.